The phone rang at 2:13 a.m., its shrill tones slicing through the silence. Emily Parker jolted upright, heart pounding, her breath caught between fear and confusion. Daniel Hayes stirred beside her, muttering in half-sleep. "Ignore it." But something in his voice trembled, a shadow stitched into his calm. Emily whispered, "It could be important." Yet Daniel's hand pressed hers down, too firm, too desperate. The phone kept vibrating, glowing on the nightstand, and then stopped. Relief nearly softened the air until it lit again, revealing a name she didn't recognize. Clara. Emily felt her chest collapse inward, a scream clawing against her throat. Daniel lunged forward, grabbing the phone, answering with a sharp, "Why are you calling me now?" His voice was low, urgent, trembling with a truth he hadn't prepared to face. Emily sat frozen, the darkness filling with 1,000 unspoken betrayals. Emily sat in silence as Daniel muttered into the phone, his voice sharp, clipped, as if each word might unravel him. She caught fragments. "Dangerous. Not now. She's here." Her stomach dropped, the room shrinking around her. Daniel ended the call, slipping the phone beneath the pillow like a secret buried in shallow earth. Emily whispered, "Who was that?" Daniel forced a smile too thin, saying, "Wrong number, go back to sleep." His tone cracked under the weight of the lie. She studied him, the man she trusted, now a stranger in her bed. Emily turned her face toward the wall, eyes burning, heart racing, knowing this night would haunt her. Shadows thickened across the room, wrapping her in doubt. The silence after the call was suffocating. Daniel's steady breathing pretended at sleep, but Emily could hear the uneven rhythm beneath it. Her mind replayed the name on the phone screen, each letter carved into her memory. Clara. She whispered the name under her breath, tasting bitterness in her mouth. Emily thought of the nights Daniel came home late, of the excuses he brushed off with charm. They had seemed harmless, ordinary. Now they were poison. She curled into herself, fists clenched, whispering, "Don't lie to me." Daniel stirred but didn't answer. Clock ticked louder in the dark, each second mocking her with truths unspoken. She pressed her face into the pillow, praying for morning. Morning light crept into the bedroom, soft golden rays cutting through the blinds. Emily blinked against the brightness, her body heavy with exhaustion. Daniel stood at the dresser, buttoning his shirt, his reflection fractured in the mirror. He smiled faintly, as if nothing had happened, saying, "Long night, huh?" Emily stared at him, searching his face for cracks. She wanted to ask about Clara, to demand the truth, but the weight in her chest stopped her words. Instead, she nodded, her lips pressed into silence. Daniel kissed her forehead lightly, his touch cold, rehearsed, and left without looking back. Emily sank into the sheets, the sunlight now a harsh reminder that lies do not vanish with dawn. The apartment felt emptier once Daniel left. Emily wandered into the kitchen, her bare feet cold against tile. She poured coffee, but her hands shook, spilling dark liquid across the counter. Her thoughts circled like vultures. Who was Clara? Why did Daniel's voice break when he spoke to her? Emily gripped the counter, knuckles white, whispering, "I will find out." Her phone buzzed with a text from Daniel, "Working late tonight, don't wait up." She laughed bitterly, the sound hollow in the quiet kitchen. Emily lifted the mug to her lips, but the taste was bitter, unbearable. She set it down, staring through the window at the city waking outside, her heart already plotting the questions she would not let die. Emily walked into her office, her steps unsteady though she forced a smile. She carried the weight of last night in her chest like a stone no one else could see. Her colleague waved, but she barely noticed. She sat at her desk, staring at the computer screen, but the only image in her mind was the phone glowing with Clara's name. Her throat tightened as she whispered to herself, "It can't be what I think." She opened a browser, typed the name, then deleted it before pressing enter. Fear and shame tangled inside her, making her doubt her own sanity. Daniel's face flashed in her thoughts, his easy smile, his lies wrapped in tenderness. Emily pressed her palm against her forehead, whispering, "Don't break now." That evening, Sarah Mitchell dropped by with takeout, her warm presence filling the silence. I didn't. Emily hugged her tightly, almost too tightly, her voice cracking as she said, I just needed to see you. Sarah studied her, eyes narrowing with concern, and asked softly, Is it Daniel again? Emily bit her lip, afraid of the truth escaping too fast. She forced a laugh that sounded brittle. It's nothing, she said. But Sarah knew better. She placed the takeout on the table and whispered, You don't have to hide from me. Emily sat across from her, heart pounding, unsure if she should let the words bleed out. The smell of food filled the room, but Emily's appetite was gone. Emily stirred the noodles in her bowl, untouched. Sarah leaned closer, voice firm yet gentle. Tell me what's wrong. Emily's chest ached as she whispered, There was a call. In the middle of the night. Sarah frowned, listening intently. Emily continued, A woman's name appeared. Clara, he answered like he already knew her. Sarah's jaw tightened. She said quietly, Emily, this isn't small. You can't ignore it. Tears pressed behind Emily's eyes as she whispered, But what if I'm wrong? What if I'm imagining it? Sarah reached for her hand and said, No one imagines pain like that. Emily's eyes filled as her fragile world cracked further. Later, after Sarah left, Emily sat alone in the living room. The clock ticked past midnight. The apartment glowed faintly under a single lamp, shadows stretching long across the walls. Daniel had not come home yet. Her phone buzzed. Another text. Staying late. Don't wait up. Emily felt anger rise in her throat, burning hotter than her doubt. She whispered aloud, You're lying to me. She walked to the window, staring at the empty street, searching for headlights that never appeared. Each second carved deeper into her heart, sharpening suspicion into certainty. Emily clenched her fists. She was done being blind. The next morning, Daniel breezed into the apartment, smiling as if nothing had happened. He kissed Emily's cheek, his cologne filling the air. Long night at work, he said smoothly. Emily studied his face, searching for cracks in the mask. Her stomach knotted as she asked, Was it worth it? His smile faltered, just for a breath. Then he chuckled, shaking his head. You really worry too much. Emily's chest throbbed. She wanted to scream, but her voice came out soft, sharp. I know when something's wrong. Daniel's eyes hardened, his smile snapping back into place like armor. Then trust me, or don't, he said coldly, walking past her. Emily stood frozen, her faith splintering like glass. Emily found a crumpled receipt in Daniel's jacket pocket. A restaurant 2 towns over, dated last night, dinner for 2. Her pulse quickened, fingers trembling as she stared at it. She whispered, Not work. Daniel stepped out of the shower, towel draped around his neck. She held the receipt in the air and asked, Care to explain this? His eyes flickered, just for a moment, before he smirked. Client dinner, he said smoothly, drying his hair. Emily's chest burned. Then why hide it? She demanded. Daniel's smile tightened. You're overthinking again, Emily. She wanted to believe him, but the receipt in her hand felt heavier than any truth he could speak. That afternoon, Emily sat with Sarah at a small cafe, her voice low and urgent. She slid the receipt across the table. Sarah's brow furrowed as she read it, then looked up with sharp eyes. This isn't business, she said. Emily whispered, I feel like I'm going crazy. Sarah leaned forward, gripping her hand. You're not crazy. He's lying. Emily's stomach twisted. She wanted proof, but feared what proof would destroy. Sarah whispered, Do you want me to help you find out? Emily hesitated, then nodded, her chest heavy with dread. The clinking of cups and chatter around them felt cruelly normal. That night, Daniel came home later than ever. Emily sat on the couch, lights dim, waiting. His smile faltered when he saw her awake. Still up? He asked, setting down his briefcase. Emily stared at him, her voice sharp. Where were you? Daniel chuckled, shaking his head. Emily, you've got to stop this. Her hands tightened on the armrest. Stop what? Asking where my fiancé spends his nights? Daniel's eyes darkened, his tone turning cold. You're paranoid. Emily's breath caught, tears burning. No, I'm not blind, she whispered. The silence afterward was heavier than any fight. Emily lay awake in bed long after Daniel fell asleep. She stared at the ceiling, her mind a storm. The faint glow of his phone lit the nightstand. Slowly, she reached for it, her hand trembling. She opened his messages, her heart racing with every scroll. The name appeared again, Clara. She froze, reading words too intimate to deny. Daniel stirred beside her, shifting in sleep. Emily's chest pounded, every breath a battle. She placed the phone back down, her body shaking. The truth had found her, but it left her hollow, afraid of what tomorrow would bring. The next morning, Daniel poured coffee as if nothing was wrong. Emily sat across from him, staring at his hands, remembering the words she read. He smiled casually. Big day ahead. She forced herself to answer, with Clara. His mug clattered against the counter. What did you say? His eyes hardened, sharp and dangerous. Emily's voice shook, but she held his gaze. I know. The silence stretched, his jaw tightening. Then, a laugh slipped out, low and cruel. You think you know, he said. Emily's chest ached as the mask finally cracked, revealing something darker beneath. Emily followed Daniel one evening, her car crawling behind his as dusk bled into night. Her palms sweated against the steering wheel, each turn tightening the noose of truth. Daniel parked outside a restaurant, one far from home, one she had never visited with him. Emily's chest ached as she watched him step out, adjusting his tie. Then Clara appeared, younger, graceful, her smile tender as she slipped her hand into his. Emily gasped, the sound trapped in her throat. The sight shattered her illusions, each second a knife carving her heart. Daniel leaned close, whispering into Clara's ear with a tenderness that once belonged to Emily. Emily's fingers dug into the steering wheel as she whispered, "He promised me forever." Her eyes blurred with tears, but she didn't look away. Daniel laughed softly with Clara, brushing a strand of her hair behind her ear. The gesture cut deeper than any blade. Emily shook her head, her breath uneven. "He's mine," she whispered, though the words felt empty, hollow against the truth staring back at her. The weight of betrayal pressed down until she could hardly breathe. She fumbled for her phone, snapping a picture with trembling hands, proof she both dreaded and needed. Emily stumbled into Sarah's apartment later that night, her face pale, her hands shaking. She thrust the phone toward Sarah without a word. Sarah's eyes widened as she saw the picture. "Oh my God, Emily." Emily's voice cracked as she whispered, "He's not mine anymore." Sarah wrapped her arms around her, but Emily stiffened, unable to accept comfort. Her world was tilting, her identity unraveling. Sarah whispered, "You need to confront him." Emily pulled back, tears burning hot. "If I do, I'll lose him. If I don't, I'll lose myself." The silence hung heavy, both choices poisoned. Daniel walked into the apartment late that night, humming softly as if the world was perfectly intact. Emily sat on the couch, the photo open on her phone, her eyes sharp and unblinking. "Where were you?" she asked, voice cold. Daniel smiled, loosening his tie. "Work dinner," he said smoothly. Emily raised the phone, showing him the image. His smile froze, the mask cracking. The silence between them roared. Daniel's jaw tightened, his voice lower, harder. "You followed me." Emily's throat burned as she whispered, "You lied to me." He stepped closer, eyes dark with fury, but Emily didn't flinch. Daniel's voice broke into rage. "You don't understand, it's not what you think." Emily's voice cracked, but she stood her ground. "I saw you. With her." His fists clenched, his chest heaving, words spilling like poison. "Clara means nothing." Emily's tears streamed as she whispered, "She means enough to destroy us." Silence consumed them, the truth bare between them like glass shards on the floor. Daniel turned away, running his hands through his hair, muttering, "You should have never known." Emily's heart sank, the the betrayal confirmed by the weight of his confession. She was broken, but no longer blind. The apartment trembled under the weight of silence before Daniel shattered it with a roar. "You were never supposed to know." His voice echoed against the walls like a storm. Emily stood tall, tears streaking her face, her voice cutting through him. "I deserve to know the truth." Daniel's eyes burned with fury, his body rigid as he stepped closer, looming over her. "You're ruining everything," he spat. Emily's chest heaved as she whispered, "You already ruined us." The air crackled between them, the lies finally stripped bare. It felt like the walls themselves were collapsing. Daniel's laughter cut sharp through the tension, cruel and mocking. "You think you're the victim? You were too blind to see what was right in front of you." Emily's hands trembled, but her voice rose with fire. "I trusted you with everything, and you turned me into a fool." Daniel's smile twisted, his words venomous. "Trust? You wouldn't survive a day if you knew who I really am." Emily's heart pounded as she shouted, "Then show me! Show me the monster behind the mask!" The words hung heavy, daring him to tear away the last of his lies. Emily threw the printed photo across the table, the one of Daniel and Clara. It fluttered onto the floor, landing face up like undeniable evidence. Daniel's face darkened, his voice cracking as he barked, "Stop digging into things you don't understand." Emily's voice shook, but did not break. "I understand betrayal. I understand you never loved me." Daniel slammed his fist against the table, the sound thunderous rattling through her chest. Emily flinched but didn't step back. "Admit it," she screamed. Daniel's eyes flared, his silence the cruelest confirmation of all. Daniel's phone buzzed on the counter, Clara's name glowing across the screen. Emily's eyes widened, her voice breaking. "She's calling you now?" Daniel lunged for the phone, but Emily grabbed it first. Her hand trembled as she held it high, tears spilling. "You still deny it?" she shouted. Daniel's face contorted with rage as he snarled, "Give it to me." He reached for it, but Emily shoved him back with every ounce of strength she had. The phone buzzed again in her grip, the name Clara burning like a brand she could never erase. Emily's scream tore from her throat. "You promised me forever." Daniel's face twisted, his voice raw. "Forever doesn't exist." The words slammed into her like a blade. She staggered back, her chest breaking open with grief and fury. For the first time, she saw him not as the man she loved, but as a stranger wearing his skin. Her voice steadied, cold and final. "Then, neither do we." The room fell into silence, the echo of her words louder than any scream. Daniel's mask slipped entirely, his eyes wild, as if realizing he had already lost her. The apartment was quiet, but it wasn't peace. Emily sat on the floor, surrounded by broken pieces of her life, framed photos of her and Daniel, shattered glass from the fight, silence pressing like a heavy weight. She pressed her arms around her knees, rocking slightly, breath uneven. Daniel's words echoed, "Forever doesn't exist." They rang like a curse in her ears. She whispered into the empty room, "Then, what was all this for?" She stared at the photos, her smiling face beside his, wondering if she had ever truly known him. The silence burned hotter than the argument, an emptiness that threatened to swallow her whole. Slowly, she picked up a frame, studied it, and whispered, "I don't even recognize her anymore." It was her own face, younger, trusting, unbroken. She set it down and closed her eyes, grief and resolve fighting inside her chest. Morning light slipped through the blinds, harsh and unkind. Emily moved slowly, collecting clothes into a suitcase. Each folded shirt felt like a burial, each zipped pocket, a goodbye she never wanted. She whispered to herself, "This isn't my home anymore." Daniel's side of the dresser remained untouched, his presence lingering like a ghost. Her fingers brushed his tie, and she pulled away, as if burned. She remembered mornings when he kissed her before leaving for work, those same ties around his neck, now symbols of betrayal. Her chest tightened, but she pressed forward, refusing to collapse again. The suitcase groaned as she zipped it shut, a sound final and sharp. She whispered, "I will not live in his lies anymore." Standing tall, her shadow stretched across the room, her figure no longer the broken girl from the night before, but someone preparing to walk away. Emily sat at a cafe with Sarah, the air filled with the smell of coffee and chatter that felt worlds away from her pain. Sarah's eyes softened as she reached across the table. "You don't have to face this alone." Emily swallowed hard, her voice shaking. "I feel like I don't even know who I am without him." Sarah squeezed her hand gently. "You are stronger than he ever wanted you to believe." Emily's tears spilled quietly, not from despair, but from the truth settling in her bones. She whispered, "I wanted to believe forever, but I don't want to be destroyed by it." Sarah's expression was fierce. "Then don't let him win. Take yourself back." Emily nodded slowly, her face still streaked with tears, but her eyes holding the faintest flicker of strength. The cafe noise blurred away, leaving only the weight of her decision. Emily returned to the apartment one last time, the air heavy with the scent of him, the echoes of their fights lingering like smoke. Daniel sat at the table, face tired, but eyes still sharp. "You're really leaving?" he asked flatly. Emily stood near the door, suitcase in hand. Her voice was calm, steady. "You already left me long before tonight." His jaw tightened, but he said nothing. She studied him for the last time, searching for the man she once loved, but seeing only the mask that had deceived her. She whispered, "You don't get to break me twice." Daniel's face hardened, as if her words wounded deeper than any scream. She turned, hand on the door, her body trembling, but her steps certain. The silence between them was final, a wall that could never be broken. The evening air was cool, as Emily stepped outside, suitcase rolling behind her. The city stretched before her, alive with lights and movement, a reminder that her story wasn't ending but changing. She paused on the sidewalk, inhaling deeply, the first breath in days that didn't feel suffocating. Her phone buzzed in her pocket, Daniel's name flashing across the screen. She stared at it for a long moment, her chest heavy. Then she silenced it, slipped it back into her pocket, and walked on. The sound of her suitcase wheels against pavement was steady, like the heartbeat she thought she'd lost. She whispered softly, almost to herself, "I am still here." The words were fragile but powerful, carrying her forward into the unknown. Her figure faded into the night, no longer broken, but remade. Emily settled into Sarah's couch, the suitcase by the door, like a reminder of all she had lost. The warmth of tea in her hands should have been comfort, but her chest was too hollow. Sarah's voice was soft. "You did the right thing." Emily stared at the steam curling upward, whispering, "Then why do I feel like I can't breathe?" Sarah moved closer, resting a hand on her shoulder. "Because endings hurt, even when they save you." Emily's tears dripped into the cup, and she whispered, "I loved him more than I loved myself." The silence after was heavy, Sarah's grip firm but unable to reach the wound inside. Emily pressed the cup down, her trembling voice cracking. "I don't know how to start over." Sarah whispered, "One breath at a time." Emily nodded faintly, though her heart ached louder than any words. Daniel sat alone in the apartment, staring at the empty space where Emily's things once filled the shelves. The silence pressed into his chest, heavier than her accusations had been. He poured whiskey into a glass, his hands shaking slightly. He muttered, "She wasn't supposed to leave." His reflection in the window stared back like a stranger, his eyes hollow, his jaw tight. Phone buzzed on the table, Clara's name glowing again. He let it ring, his gaze fixed on the darkness outside. He whispered to himself, "I've lost both worlds." The weight of his double life crushed down, leaving him with nothing but shadows. He raised the glass, drank deeply, and muttered, "Shall never forgive me." The room stayed silent, offering no answer. Emily wandered the city streets at night, the neon signs painting her face in fractured colors. The world around her moved on. Couples laughed. Cars honked, music spilled from bars. But inside, She felt like a ghost. She whispered into the wind, "He promised me forever." The words stung as they left her lips, drifting away into noise. She stopped at a crosswalk, staring at the blur of headlights, her chest heavy with both sorrow and strange relief. She realized she had nothing left to lose except herself, and that had to be enough. She exhaled sharply, whispering, "I'm still standing." The light turned green, and she stepped forward, her figure swallowed by the tide of strangers, her pain hidden but not gone. Sarah found Emily sitting on the balcony the next morning. The city skyline stretched before her. Emily's eyes were puffy, but her gaze steady, fixed on the horizon. Sarah leaned against the railing beside her. "You didn't deserve this pain," she said quietly. Emily whispered, "But I survived it." Her voice trembled, but the truth carried strength. She clutched a small box in her hands, filled with Daniel's letters and photos. Slowly, she set it down on the balcony ledge, striking a match. Flames caught, curling the edges, turning memories into ash. Her tears mixed with the smoke, but her lips formed a whisper. "This is the last time he takes anything from me." The fire burned out quickly, leaving only silence and a faint smile on her lips, fragile but real. That night, Emily lay in bed at Sarah's apartment, her eyes heavy, but her heart still restless. She stared at the ceiling, hearing echoes of Daniel's voice in the dark, his promises turned to poison. Her phone lit on the nightstand with a final message, "I'll love you forever." She stared at the words, her breath sharp. Slowly, she deleted it, her fingers steady despite the tears streaming down her face. She whispered into the silence, "Forever is a lie." Her body trembled as she rolled onto her side, clutching the pillow. The room stayed quiet, but the silence now felt like hers, not his. The wound would not vanish, but she had survived the blow. And in that survival, there was something stronger than revenge, the beginning of freedom.